Hello, everybody. We're so glad to be back. I'm Rebecca Green, and I'm here with Erin Ethridge, and we are going to be sharing everything about She Builds Teams and how you can build an ecosystem behind a profitable, scalable real estate business. Super excited to be here. Hi, Erin.
Hi, how are you? I'm excited to have everybody on board here, and we just feel that all women need some form of a team, so I'm excited that they're here.
Amazing. And of course, our goal is, as Erin mentioned, to help everyone in real estate understand what it takes to build a team. But most importantly, we always like to stay focused on aligned, profitable, and sustainable teams. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So I mentioned I'm Rebecca Green. I am the founder of the CEO Agent Academy. I've been in the business for a ton of years. Somebody told me 3 decades. I was like, that makes me feel way older than I want to feel. But okay, 3 decades. I just don't say it very often. And we're here with Erin. She's the founder of the Ethridge team. Erin's been in the business for 25 years. She's sold 1,300 homes plus. She runs a super team in the Arizona market. And then, of course, you all know Kristen. She's not with us today, but Kristen is the community builder extraordinaire. And I know you're all super familiar with Kristen. So maybe you're here because you feel overwhelmed or there's a bit of burnout going on. Maybe you've had some turnover on your team. Maybe you need systems in place. Maybe you felt like your business depends entirely on you, even though you have 12 people in your space on your team, or you have a big admin team. Sometimes we get to that place in our businesses. Or maybe you're trying to decide if you should start a team, keep the one you have, or grow the one you have. We have something here for everybody, no matter where you are. So a couple of things, if you can drop in the chat, what best describes where you are right now? Are you building your first team? That's a 1. 2, you want to refine an existing team. Or 3, you're trying to scale what already feels like a well-oiled machine. We'd also love to know where everyone is coming from today. All right, so here's what we think about why most teams fail. We think most teams fail because they are built around personalities, not systems. Or agents hire, here we go, Sonoma County, California, love it. Agents hire too fast. Amy, while you're there, do you have a team or are you thinking about building a team? Agents often hire too fast. One of my favorites is, hey, Rebecca, I want to build a team. I really just think I need a person. And I'm like, well, a person, what do you mean? A person, I just need a body. So that leads us into a situation where expectations are never set. Therefore, they're probably never going to be met. Some teams fail because expenses are super high and profits are really low and people don't know to monitor those things. There's a lack of consistency, leadership direction, lack of brand cohesiveness, and a lack of a consistent experience or service. And so we're trying to take all of the pain that we felt through all of the iterations of our team and make it easier for you.
So Amy had said, I don't have a team yet. I have been working on adding admin, trying to figure out if a team is the next good stuff for me down the road. And we'll definitely, Amy, hit that along the way here. So thank you for that comment, because everybody starts with who do we hire? How do we get things set up? Which is exactly why we're here, because I started my team 7 years ago. And, I was a top producing agent. I was doing 16 million plus in personal production. I had a TC, but I didn't have anybody to go show property if I wasn't around. I didn't have anybody to work open houses like on my listings without posting it inside of our brokerage, right? I didn't have any kind of systems. And basically what happened is I had 5 friends decide to get into the business. And it's one of those things where 90%, we know that 90% of new agents fail inside the first 2 years. And I just felt really guilty and like responsible. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it once a week. And now we're the Ethridge team. So I had 0 plans, 0 anything in what I was setting up. And that's exactly why we are here.
Yeah, that's the pile of humans without the infrastructure.
That's exactly right. We don't want that for you. So you should write down if you guys have anything that feels disconnected in your business, if there is any identifiable misalignment that you're feeling. But then also, what are some things that you feel that you need the most help with in order to build a successful team? Because the truth is, you probably already have a very good idea of who you might want to hire. You might need some more systems or some more answers around what that looks like in job descriptions and things, which we're going to get into.
Okay, so we talk a lot about an ecosystem, and we're really here to talk to you about building that. So that, when we talk about ecosystem, what we mean is you're aligning your vision with your systems, your operations, your agent support, the leadership structure, the leadership and the structure, the people and the culture. It's really an all-encompassing ecosystem. And when you're able to do that, that's where we believe longevity in that team happens. And so we're going to be touching on all of the different parts of the ecosystem, starting with our 8-pillar framework. And these are the pillars, which ironically, Erin and I went away, Kristen, Erin and I kind of went away to decide what the core pillars of team building look like. We all came to the same conclusion. While we might have named the pillars differently, we came to a place where we were in such alignment on this. You have to absolutely address and figure out your vision and the structure for your team. Pillar 2 is your team roles and responsibilities. Having that ironed out is so invaluable. Your contracts and compensation, systems and SOPs, and then marketing and branding, training and onboarding, culture, leadership, and retention, and then growth and ancillary services is another one.
Because the first and foremost, everything starts with your vision and what you ultimately see for your life and what is important to you. For me, I wanted some more of my time back so that I can vacation with my family 12 to 14 weeks a year. I didn't necessarily needed to make more money. I needed to be profitable, but I formed the team to get my time back, right? So this is kind of where we start talking about what you ultimately want to have, because you have to end up deciding of what kind of agent you're going to speak to. Are you speaking to new agents? Are you speaking to seasoned agents? Because the truth is that if you choose to work with rookie agents, a lot of times it takes a while for them to ramp up, but you can teach them and have them with you for a longer time period. But they only convert at 16%. So if you gave them a lead, if you're like, oh my gosh, this is Sally and Sue, I already have them pre-qualified. If you gave them a lead, they only convert at 16%, where if you have somebody seasoned in real estate, they're going to convert at a much higher percentage. So anywhere from 50 to 70% that they're actually closing that. So that's just kind of something to consider.
Mm-hmm. And then it leads into, of course, the different types of teams, right, Erin? Like what the agents that you're bringing in lead to a different team structure and setup. So this is a great opportunity for Erin and I to share some of the different ways we've run our teams. Erin, I think you start with that, because the other thing to consider is that within a team that you're building, you can have different types of teams inside of the one business. It's just how you lay it out and how you articulate that to the agents that you're bringing on. So Erin, how do you run your team?
So I run I actually have 3 teams essentially inside of a team. First and foremost, I believe every woman in real estate should have a micro team around them. What I mean by a micro team is a TC and a production partner. I'm not talking about a buyer's agent. A buyer's agent is only showing property and gets paid a very small percentage if they sold something. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a production partner, which is basically a clone of yourself, right? That is out there creating buyers, sellers, and actually acting as you along with that TC. So I have that. You can pay them either a salary or a 10% percentage of everything that you do. And then I have my elite team. My elite team is just a standard real estate team. So it is either a 30-70, 50-50 split, depending on where the leads are coming from. And they have access to CRMs and leads and all sorts of resources. So a true traditional team, as well as I have an indie team, or we have it listed as a marketing group. And this marketing group, I did it at only 10%. But these are agents that are really like independent, but maybe they want the community of a team. They just don't want to give up the split. Well, you can't have the same amount of things that you're giving to the indie team, right? So they basically have access to some templates. They have access to our Slack channel and recordings of our meetings. So they are really, truly working independently. I don't answer any kind of questions on deals or deal doctoring at all. That would be to the broker. So I have three and one-ish setup. How do you have yours set up?
Yeah, so in some ways, very similar. I have focused primarily on building small teams. And while I've been in the business for 34 years, I really started my first team just on year 2. And the first thing that I hired was an admin, and then I hired a buyer's agent because I had babies at home and I recognized that there was just not enough hours in the day. So that small team is where I started. And so the small to medium team is what I've continued to run throughout my real estate career. The important thing here is there's no right or wrong answer. It's just understanding what type of team you want to have. So I've stuck with the small team. And then I also have, because of the brokerage that I'm with, we're both with Real. We are able to have these marketing groups where the marketing groups, as Erin mentioned, she calls it the indie team. We're not contractually connected to those transactions, but we are still a resource and we're still here for collaboration and shared marketing efforts. And that's such a great way to work with agents as a team lead, but also it's such a great structure for agents as well. And so, every agent in their journey is going to need a different structure. So, Erin mentioned the micro team where those agents are really supporting her business. The small team, while I have agents on the team, I've always been focused on helping them build their own businesses and helping them graduate into building their own teams. And so that leads to, what actually do you want to offer the agents that come in? And then the one thing we didn't talk about is the mega team. Erin, what do you typically say a mega team is? 50 agents or above, 100 agents?
Yeah, it's 50 agents or more. And I've had a super big mega team I've had from 5 people up to 40 some agents like it. And currently I sit at about 12, 13 agents. So it's probably more of a mid-size team right now.
Yeah.
And all of them offer pluses and minuses, but it just wasn't, to go back to your point, Rebecca, it wasn't in alignment for me to have a whole pile of people if I was making more money just on my own micro team with my own deals, right?
Without a doubt.
Yes.
Without a doubt. Those are some of the mistakes that like we're here to help you not make, because we often think that production equals profit.
Right.
Or people doing more production means more money, and it can mean the exact opposite.
Yeah, because you definitely have, your profit is not what's left over, it's what you plan for. And I wish that somebody would have told me when I first started a team, because remember that it was my friends, right? So me being a top producing agent, I was like, oh, you can just give me 10%, right? I thought that I was doing right by people, but knowing what I now know is that if you charge somebody too little, and it doesn't align with your vision of like, I want to be able to provide marketing or pay for an admin or pay for an office, you have to take into consideration what you're charging now in order to pay for things in the future. Does that make sense?
Like, right, of course, because because the market shifts, right? So like you have to prepare for the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario.
Exactly, because I knew anytime that you start your own team, I feel like there's, just like when you start any new business where you get into real estate, there's a certain amount of costs, like, or startup costs, right, that are associated with you starting your team, but you really can't fund the team forever and ever, because then you're just running a nonprofit, right? So now I know that if you are running a standard team, paying for a CRM, any kind of leads, any admin at all, you must be charging a minimum of 30%, or you'll end up going backwards. So I didn't know that. So now you know that.
So the takeaway here is production doesn't always equal profit. You have to remember that. You have to define how your business pays you first. As Erin mentioned, bankrolling a team is not a great idea, right? And not only are you financially backing the team, it's not paying you back, but boy, is that emotionally and physically draining as well. So we don't want to do that. You want to build your model around margins, not just GCI. That is so, so important. This fallacy of these vanity metrics of I did X amount of GCI and I did X amount of volume. I've totally been there and promoted that. And I still do talk about it because it speaks to credibility and experience. However, the real key is the profit. And as Erin said, I love this statement that Erin makes. Profit is not what's left over. It's actually what you plan for. And that's a really key part of the business structure that you have to pay a lot of attention to.
Because ultimately, the first thing that we would tell you is that we want to have your roles and responsibilities kind of lined up before you did anything. And what I mean by that is if you choose to hire an agent or if you choose to hire an admin, if they don't have a very clear picture of what their expectations are and how do they know that they're winning, then it will start to kind of fall apart, right?
For sure.
So define functions before people, have clear job descriptions, measurable outcomes. What I mean by that too is if you hire an admin at $50,000 a year, that means that admin must contribute. You always want to have them contribute or earn $150,000. It's always 3 times whatever that salary is what they should be ultimately bringing in to the company. And sometimes that's really hard to understand from an admin standpoint. It could be taking that much off of your plate so that you are able to go and create that other 150 because now you've passed those jobs off. Or maybe it is somebody on social media and you want to have X amount of deals from social media. in order to earn 3 times whatever that social media manager is making. Does that make sense?
Erin, that metric that you just talked about, when you have a salary that's X, you need to be able to make Y. Is that something that somebody told you right up front? Is that something that you had to learn the hard way?
Yeah, that is firstly the hard way, because I basically funded my team. I was 3 years into the business before I don't know why it didn't dawn on me to have like a bookkeeper and a CPA for my business. So dumb, but I didn't, right? And so essentially, when he was going over my quarterly numbers, he's like, "Hey, Erin, like, I don't mean to step on your toes, but like, I just gotta ask, do you like running a nonprofit?" I'm like, "What? Excuse moi? Like, what do you mean? We sold 100 million. Like, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, if we go back to all of the numbers, you made the money along with you and your production partner, and then you paid for the team, the team's admin, the team's social media, all of the buyer and seller packets, all of the team events. But essentially, the team did not make the money that you contributed, essentially, right?" And so I just learned a very, very expensive lesson. And again, you guys, I'm 7 years into this, so I didn't learn that until last year.
Yeah.
On the 3 times the salary. So from me to you, if you hire anyone, they need to be bringing in 3 times whatever you're paying them.
Yeah. And that is so valuable, and definitely nothing that anyone talked to me about in all of my different team iterations at all. You touched on something as well. Leads often are the business, and leads are often commingling what they should be taking home with the team. And when we liken that to like any other business, that's not the way another business would work. And so it's very important to understand that going into it and be able to separate those buckets of money, so to say.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Because I do buy leads for my elite team, but I have to also remember they're not going to convert at the same level that I would convert it at, as well as I, as a team leader, have made the conscious decision to teach people how to fish. I'd rather teach them how to work their database and their SOI so that it can be a very long-term thing for them, versus just buying leads and then somebody becomes very dependent on the team, which sounds good in theory, but then it's kind of weird.
It's not at all. And I'm 1000% behind you on that. And I've actually had team members join my team who came off of. So for anyone out here listening and are thinking about joining a team, there's valuable information here for you too. So to Erin's point about buying leads, delivering leads to the team, and that being a part of the business model versus showing an agent how to build a business that is a long-term scalable business, they're very different things. And I've actually had team members join me that have come out of a team situation where they have been in the business for 7 years. They've done a fair number of deals, but all of those deals were handed to them by the team lead through paid ads, generally paid ads. When they decided to leave the team, all of those leads were still the team lead's contacts. So 7 years into the business, these agents didn't actually have a business of their own.
Right. And so that's where, and that's where for me, I'm happy to pay for leads as long as my team is calling them and they're being worked properly and converted properly. Right. But it's not saying that it's the end all be all, because what I found is that agents were going to be like so happy that we had leads coming in. But what I ended up finding is they actually want me to cultivate it, convert it, and just hand them someone to go show property. And that's just not what online leads are. They take six months to 2 years to convert. And that agent actually has to continuously follow up with that person. And I just kind of found that not all agents are built for that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about different roles to consider, because I think when you talk about building a team, people immediately, and Amy had mentioned, like, I'm considering an admin, I think it's natural to go the admin route, or maybe a buyer agent, or, an agent concierge, somebody who's licensed that could, step in for you when need be. But there are lots of different roles to think about.
There really are. And I feel like I had an in-house admin for 2 years paying 50, 60 grand, right? And I was actually able to last year end up find a VA that does very well. And I was actually able to convert that whole entire role to a virtual assistant. Now, is it the end all be all? Because there's some things in real life, like I have to go pick up my own signs. I have to, do certain things in real life without that person, but paying $12,000 a year versus $60,000 for me was worth that.
For sure. But there are other in-house roles to consider even beyond that. Erin talks about house managers. Maybe you need somebody in your life just to help pick up the kids, manage the house, because that's going to allow you to stay in your own zone of genius where you are super profitable. It could be an in-house media team. It could be in-house staging. It could be a marketing manager, maybe a social media marketing. So team means there's been this negative wave for so long about, oh no, I'm never going to be a part of a team, or I'm not going to build a team. I'm doing it all myself. That is just impossible. I mean, just to cut to the chase on that, it is impossible for two reasons. One, there are only so many hours in the course of every given day. Right. Two, we cannot all be good at everything. I am an excellent negotiator. Social media drains me, right? So we cannot all be good at everything. And if we try to focus on everything, something's going to break somewhere along the line. So I would encourage people to think about team never in a negative way. Never.
Well, and also, Rebecca, in addition to that, NAR came out with the stats from this last year that 70% of all transactions came from teams. So that means only 30% were coming from solo agents, which I thought was really interesting, because you just really can't run everything by yourself, to your point.
You can't. Okay, so how you build your team, whether it be mega, mini, indie team, marketing group, however you build your team, whatever decision you make, whatever hire you make, there's really no right or wrong in that arena. Same thing with contracts. There are lots of options, and there are some wrong things in the contract world, but the one non-negotiable is that you absolutely positively have to have contracts for every member of your team. That is a buyer agent and admin. The contract component is non-negotiable. We would never sell a home without a contract. It's the same thing in the team building space. So what should your contracts include? And we're going to just stop right here. Neither of us are attorneys. Neither of us are accountants. Neither of us are bookkeepers. We run great teams. We've been in the business for a really long time. We've made a lot of mistakes. And I know my team contract, I'm probably on version 68. So this has just come from experience, but we are going to say that you should always check with a local attorney, because what is allowed state to state is very different. So we want to make sure you're compliant. But in general, contracts should include the roles and the responsibilities, definitely a compensation structure. No one wants their pay to get changed at the closing table. That's really not fair to anyone. And it's more management for you not to do it upfront. Lead ownership, who owns what, super important. Expectations and standards, not just expectations, but what do I mean by standards? Like, how are the agents on your team meant to work with clients? And there are a lot of team leads who will deal doctor for their agents, but they don't get involved in a level of standard and or a level of care. And somewhere along the line that breaks, right? That is because now you have, as the team lead, maybe you get awkward phone calls from another agent saying, hey, your team member did A, B, and C, and you're horrified. But at the end of the day, you probably never talked to them about why they shouldn't be doing that. So while it sounds overwhelming, it's not. We're going to help you with that. It's just really important to make sure you have that in your contract. You also want the accountability and the consequences. Erin runs the consequence part of her team, and that, like, in such a beautiful way. And so I'm excited for her to talk to you about that in a bit. And it's something that while I've always had, it wasn't as structured as what Erin's was. And so that was a recent edit I made to my contracts. Termination clause, confidentiality, non-solicitation, and then resources that you're providing. Like, what is it that you're actually covering for your team? That's really important as well. Some team leads say, I don't want to cover any of the systems for them. However, then you have a team full of agents working in all these different platforms. Somebody's using SkySlope, somebody's using .loop, somebody's using zip forms. From a management standpoint, it becomes really hard to, plug in and out of all of those different things. So your systems, your tools, and your resources and what you're providing is not only an explanation of the value, it's also a management component for you. And so these are all things that, again, you should consider inside of your contract.
Right.
So compensation plans, again, there's no right split, except for it has to be profitable. I mean, that's the non-negotiable there. And as Erin mentioned, you cannot run a profitable team in most situations when they're at 10%. And there are a lot of 10% teams out there. You do get what you pay for.
But I also want to kind of back that back in. So a healthy P&L, a healthy P&L means that it's between 20 and 22% profit, right? After all expenses are paid, that you are making between 20 and 22%. So if you're doing 30%, that you only have a little bit of money to spend. And that includes if you have a salary or anything like that. So even at the 30%, it's just super tight. And that's what team members might not always understand. But it isn't a nonprofit. You shouldn't be doing it for free.
And splits should be built after you build the business plan. To Erin's point, like the healthy P&L, you've got to have that certain margin or the business just doesn't make sense. Right. And so that's your business planning process. You want to make sure you establish your splits based on that. You may also get to the point where you recognize in that business planning phase that having 20 agents at a 10% split is not going to get you there, but you could have 4 agents at a higher split, which inevitably is going to be lower on the expense standpoint. It's going to be lower on the time standpoint and make much more profit. And so, that is the bigger numbers don't always mean more money. And so your splits have to be built out after your business planning phase. You have to know your expenses and you have to know your value before choosing a structure. And then you want to treat yourself, we touched on this, you want to treat yourself like an agent on the team. You don't want all of your income to go back to the team. You need to be paid something. And as Erin mentioned, the best way to do it is really you get a salary for the team management, and then you're getting commission splits back to you, just like any other agent on the team is getting the commission splits. And then you're also paying a portion of your commission into the team. That's really the best way to do it, but it often takes us a lot of years to get there. And then your production is your income, which I sort of just mentioned as well. You can't funnel everything back into the team because you're going to be burnt out and broke. Okay, systems and operations are really the backbone to freedom. We believe this so fully that you have to have systems in place, and you have to be in a position where if your business, where your business doesn't stop when you leave, right? You don't have a business if it completely shuts down when you step out. You have a job. And so the systems and the structure help fix this. And I will have to say, Erin, chime in here. Your team members expect you to have structure in place. That is one of the primary reasons I find agents are looking for teams.
Right. Like for us, one of the best things that we set up right away was like an internal intranet. Just because Google Drive can be super messy. Same thing Dropbox wise. Like we wanted to have all scripts in a place.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the team calendar. Here's the team calendar. Here is when you get a buyer, here's the checklist. Mm-hmm. When you get a seller, here's the checklist. We wanted to have everything in one place, and that's worked out really well, along with our Slack channel that people can interact with each other, and everything's just very well organized of like, hey, I'm looking for an open house, or this is a coming soon. It's all very well organized on there.
Yeah, for sure. And it creates a culture. Right? It creates like a cultural element within your team when everyone is operating out of those same systems, right? Mm-hmm. It creates that consistency and that repetition. So you want to make sure that you've established that, what it is that how you're going to run your business. What do those operations look like? Because one thing we know in real estate is that marketing is often overdeveloped and operations are very underdeveloped. And that's the scalable part. You can't really scale or grow or tweak or edit much when your operations are chaotic. And your marketing is actually going to convert at a much higher rate if you have good operations in place where there is a consistent lead follow-up. There is a process and a procedure for working with buyers and sellers. And as Erin mentioned, those scripts and those templates. We deliver all of that inside of this She Builds teams. We're actually handing those playbooks over. We've also built some really great AI tools for community members, She Build team members, so that they can plug in and use AI to help them set some of these things up.
But I also think too, Rebecca, in this space, one of the things that team leaders must have is either a Loom video or some other thing like that, right? Because you end up, if you work with first-time home buyers, you have to repeat yourself many, many times because it's the first time that they're hearing all of this information. It's the exact same thing with team members. Yeah. And so we found that having basically a library of Loom videos of any time that you have to repeat yourself more than one time, it's best to go ahead and have a Loom video showing them, here's how you pull comps, here's how you write an offer. Just not that you're not going to teach on those topics, right? But just, you don't want a phone call at midnight, right? Mm-hmm. That somebody's trying to figure out how to write an offer. Like that's not fair to anyone. So we've found that really helpful also.
Totally agree. And you build that really robust library, which is now something and this is the ecosystem talking, right? That's now something you use as a value proposition for recruiting new agents. Mm-hmm. Right? We have all of these training videos available. We have a library available. Okay, so another part of the operations and the system component is the consistency in your process is so very important. And that repetition creates confidence. And the team consistency actually elevates the quality of service and it creates a really strong brand identity. So there's another value add there for making sure you have your processes dialed in. The leadership and the overview and the management is also much easier when you have consistency in your systems. So what are some of the systems we're talking about and how do we streamline them? First and foremost, technology should make your life easier, not more complicated. And that's one of the things that, I get in my space because I work with agents to level up their operations and their systems, is that you onboard all of this technology and it's not making things easier. It's actually making things worse. The process, the procedure is overcomplicated. And in real estate in particular, there are all these tools And some agents are spinning all of these different plates, and those tools never actually communicate with each other. So streamlining your tech stack is really important. And before you add new tools, you should always be evaluating what you already have and what problem you're looking to solve. But the right tech stack is going to create huge efficiencies. And in running a team, you need those efficiencies in place. For any of the moms out here, it's like running a household with 3 children. There are some things you have to have really, really organized so that it's not super chaotic all the time, because the chaos comes no matter what. It's the same thing in real estate. Transactions can be chaotic. So the right tech stack is really going to create efficiency, and the wrong tech stack is going to create a lot of confusion. Your team is relying on you to lead the charge there, right?
Correct.
No team member wants to join a team and the team lead can't answer the questions about where to find things or what systems are in use or what the process and procedure or the operational expectation is.
Correct.
Okay, I'm not going to go over all of these, but you should have a CRM. A lot of tools do multiple things. You definitely have to have a CRM. You should have an email marketing platform. You should have contract and transaction management, some sort of communication platform. Erin talks so much about her Slack channel. Can you imagine when you have, if you have 50 people on your team and it's a text strand? This is not sustainable. It might be sustainable if you're running a smaller team, if there's only 3 or 4 of you, but you also want to make sure task and project management is in place. You want to have a centralized file storage system. Why is it important in a team environment for everyone to be working inside of the same systems? Well, a lot of it is management. When you have an admin that maybe you cover the cost of the admin, it's not fair to the admin to have to pop in and out of a million different systems for all of the different agents on the team. And I know sometimes I say that and people are like, well, of course everyone has to be using the same systems, but I can also assure you that's not always the case. And sometimes it's a team leads, there's a fear of, I really want this agent to join my team, but I can't tell them they have to use Zip Forms instead of SkySlope, or I can't tell them they have to use Dropbox instead of Drive. You just have to set the expectations up front. And that goes into, the framework that Erin talked about at the beginning. Build your framework out and make those decisions so that it's easier to communicate moving forward. Accountability, performance tracking, listing marketing. What does that look like? Lead routing, appointment scheduling, recruiting, marketing creation, assets, Canva. That could be Canva. We have 12 things listed here. Many tools do 3, 4, or 5 of these all in one. So we're not suggesting that you onboard 12 different tools, but you should be thinking about how the tools you have run and manage the things that we have on this list.
Correct.
Okay. So we are branding. Okay. Branding that attracts the right people. Branding can mean signs, it can mean logos, it can mean colors, it can mean fonts, but we're actually talking about it as a business decision. And in this space, some examples of the business decision. Erin, let's talk about brand standards within the teams and how you and I have done a couple of things differently. Because for us, when we talk about branding as a business decision, we don't really mean the fonts and the colors.
Yeah.
We mean the representation of the team kind of in the public.
Right. Like how you show up. Because I know that Rebecca and I differ on several things, but there's good reasons that we have on either side. It depends on where we both align, right? For instance, on my team, I allow the agent to brand themselves. they can use whatever email they want to. I don't make them use a team email. The only thing that I am strict on is that I want to make sure that it's a .com. I don't want it to be a Gmail. And the main reason for that is if I walked into a doctor's office or a lawyer's office, like we're making doctor and lawyer money, right? I don't want to see my lawyer have a Gmail. Like, I just feel like they can spend the $3 a month, right? Or whatever that is to have that domain. I just feel like that's an important piece to that. The one thing that I do require them to use is on all cards, all emails, everything. I want to make sure that it is the team phone number. And the reason why that is, it does connect to their cell phone number, but anything client facing, I want the call to come in and be recorded. And it's a CYA for that agent, for me, but it's also a way for me to hold them accountable. When they say like, oh yeah, I just made phone calls from my cell phone. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. So it's a way for me to monitor very easily inside the CRM. I can just look down and see how many phone calls were actually made. They're still calling from their cell phone, but they're calling from that Ethridge team number.
That's huge. Another branding decision is signage. So Erin mentioned, let's go back to the email for a second. Erin mentioned her process and her standards for the email. On my team, I do require that my team use the @sellingportlandrealestate.com email address. That was a decision I made early on. There's no right or wrong answer, except for the fact that you have to pick a lane and you have to stick with it, because you don't want one agent on the team doing one thing and another agent doing something completely different if you've said that those things aren't a part of what's acceptable for your team structure. So, the consistency is the important part. But so I have it set up a little bit differently. And then signs are another branding decision. What do your signs look like? So
go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah. For my team, we all use the same sign panel, and it's all sellingportlandrealestate.com team with the real brokerage logo. And then my team has their own riders, and those riders have their own phone number on them. They can add a second rider if they wanted to do a QR code. So, my goal is to get calls directly to the team member, on any sign calls. But I also wanted the consistency of the sellingportlandrealestate.com brand. Erin, how do you handle your signs?
So my signs, as long as they have real broker, the Ethridge team, they can even have their own logo, but my logo colors can never change. I had early on, I didn't have that as a standard. And I had one girl create all of her open house signs, and she changed my logo to like this salmon pink. I'm like, no. And that's because I didn't set that standard, right? Yeah. So now on my signs, they can have their own logo, but my brand colors never change. And then they all have to be the same size, right? We don't want one bigger than the other. They must use the team phone number. And they could, if it is my listing, let's say like my lead or whatever, then most of the time I just have the Ethridge team sign, and then they can have a sign writer that they pay for. I don't pay for the sign writer. If they want their name on that, if it is my lead, then most of them are very happy to go create that,
Which leads us right into, Erin mentioned, like, I don't pay for the writers. I do pay for the writers because I also require the signs. I also pay for the signs. And when we talk about branding as a business decision, those are the things that we are talking about, because the branding decisions that you make actually flow into your operations. They flow into your commission plans. They flow into expenses and recruiting and retention. They actually flow into your value proposition, and they should flow into your contracts as well. So for example, in my contracts, I do state that we're providing the signs, and we're providing the writers, and we're providing X amount of open house signs. But I will also say that I charge an onboarding fee when I hire a new agent. And so the cost of that is something that really is covered by that onboarding fee. So the branding decisions, you can see how when I decided to do that, I had to have the conversation with myself of, where does that come into play from an expense standpoint?
Right.
And so again, it's not just colors and logos. It's really a much bigger picture.
Right.
And then Erin, I'm gonna let you talk about this because you know, this is something, how you decide you want your team to show up in the market. You mentioned that, earlier on. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this one, I wish I would have spent a little bit more time on this because remember, I just had these 5 friends join me and I had started Googling of, what people respect or what people felt the most comfortable with. And I was kind of thinking more of like lawyers, it's like Johnson and Johnson and like Thomas and Thomas kind of a thing. And at that time, it was more based off of family names that people felt like it was maybe smaller or well managed, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of something like, the One Team or the, whatever, because not all agents are going to love that my last name is associated with theirs, or like, oh, I'm on the Ethridge team, right? So again, it depends on what you ultimately want. But if I could go back in time, because I was thinking like resale wise, or even if I wanted to step all the way out of production, when you have the Etheridge team, and let's say I wanted to have another team leader come in and then they have to continue that name and that branding, right? It just doesn't align necessarily. So I wish I would have spent some more time on that. Is that how you decided on
the Selling Portland Real Estate? Yeah. So the Selling Portland Real Estate team was a conscious decision, as Erin had mentioned. Like, I was thinking maybe people didn't want to work for the Rebecca Green team or Rebecca Green and Co. My business was very much so built in helping agents to learn the business, grow their business, scale the business, and maybe even exit the business. And so with that framework in mind for what I was coaching and teaching agents, I was thinking about it very much so for myself too. And being able to exit, as Erin just mentioned, what if I don't want to sell anymore and I want to move into a different space? Being able to exit with the sellingportlandrealestate.com team, it allows anyone to step in and take that team anywhere they would want it to go. So you have to think those things through. And listen, no one really was talking about this when Erin and I were building teams. This is not a space that people were. In fact, many brokerages, even today, many brokerages are very anti-team, which is absurd to both of us. But, so the conversation wasn't out there. And so, think about branding beyond, again, colors, fonts, logos. How do you want it to show up? Lots of people have gone with like a name similar to the Etheridge team, and they are some of the biggest teams and super profitable all across the country. So there is no right or wrong to that. Just spend a bit of time thinking about it.
Right. So the attracting to standards and vision, it still comes back to, again, what do you want to see? Because I feel like for me, and I feel like maybe it's just like pipe dreaming, I don't know. For me, I really love working with other top producing agents, but you have to start with, it's kind of, there's a couple different coaches in the industry that will say of like, well, you have to have the Army or the Navy before you can have the Navy SEALs, right? Where you have to have a bigger group and then you kind of can narrow that down a little bit. But then it's also kind of deciding who you want to work with, because if you're working with mainly all new agents and then you get two producing agents that are doing 10 million or more, well, they don't necessarily want to help or work with these brand new agents, which I got it. That's not their job. That's my job, right? but it's kind of like donkeys don't want to associate with horses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before, I would really say that when you're setting your standards and your vision, the reason why people leave teams is because they kind of run out of runway, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, or they don't see an opportunity to where they can make more money or make more choices on their own. So some people will have kind of more of like, what's that called? Like a tier level of like, hey, if you sell 25 homes a year or more, you have a different split. And it goes on from that. Or like for me, I can have a team trainer. If you really did want to sit open houses with rookie agents and help them write contracts and things like that, here's an additional income that you can earn. But in order to have that benefit, you have to maintain this level of production, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would tell you that before you say no, just like on our real estate transactions, before you say no to any crazy ask of like a top producing agent or anything like that, because some of it is you have to just have these set standards. But when you have a producing agent, I would really challenge you to say yes when you do XYZ in production, or yes, when I'm happy to do that for you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. When you're able to get to XYZ, show up on time, do blah, 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 I'm absolutely happy to take care of that marketing or get you a social media person or get you a showing partner. Does that make sense? Like you want to also encourage people to stay on your team for longer, especially if they're producing.
For sure. And this is a bit of a segue, but we had a one-on-one with a team lead who hired a very top producing agent in the marketplace, thinking that that was going to be super profitable. And in fact, it was the exact opposite because it took so many of the resources away from other agents in on the team. And so, the standards and the vision are just so very important. And that also ties into production isn't always the best route to go, right? You've got to figure those things out. One thing we know for sure, though, is you want to be conscientious about when you hire and be prepared for it.
Totally, because ultimately a team leader's job is to really plan for the future and anticipate the needs of their team. Like Rebecca and I should be able to look at our teams and say, okay, 12 months from now, I'm going to need to hire another assistant because I'm seeing the need for XYZ. Or, hey, I have 3 producing agents that they have said social media is also their pain, and I will need to budget or figure out how I can pay for this social media manager for them, let's say.
Yeah, and that's forecasting, and that's being in your business and really understanding it, not just a frenzy hired, because the hiring out of pain definitely never pans out. There's no one that I have whiskey throttled on a hire in 34 years that has been a good situation. I had a lot of fun with my best friend who I whiskey throttled and hired. And that was a different positive experience. It was not super profitable, but It was right. Can you agree with that? There's no whiskey throttle hire that you're like, darn, I did such a good job with that.
Yeah, because I feel like what also happens with teams is that sometimes a team leader will, spew all over of like, this is how you run an open house, and then just expect that agent to absorb everything that you just said, right? And it's not exactly like that. Like true training really needs to be a watch me do it, right? And then I watch you, which is the most painful part, is because they're gonna screw it up. And then you can watch you until they perfect it, essentially, right? Once they've perfected it, they should be able to go out and do it without you. But it is watching me run a listing consultation, a buyer consultation. Here's how I do an open house. And then I have to watch them do it, because what they hear is not always what I said.
Without a doubt. And that's the clarity, right? The systems, the operation, the clarity. This is kind of where we're completing that circle on the ecosystem here. And really retention on a team, in a team situation, retention is a really interesting component of it. You know, as a team lead, you have to be prepared. Agents are going to leave.
Right.
Even the ones you think will never leave might leave.
They're all leaving you. They're all leaving. Is because team leaders are the ones that are bringing in new talent into the brokerages, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
For sure.
Right? Because I would say, again, coming back down to your vision, as far as magnetizing your message, it's like, okay, a small team like Rebecca and I can spend some more one-on-one time on with people on a small team. But if we had a mega team of 50 some agents, not only is that not possible to spend time with that many people, but if you think of it from a CEO standpoint, you don't want, like, a true CEO would never spend time with like a janitor necessarily. You might say, hey, what's up? But that is somebody else's job and role to watch over that person. So if that is the case and you're running a mega team, it really needs to be your top 5% of who is producing. And that's where you spend your time with them, because they really want your time, right? Like they want to be you and want to, you know, really emulate exactly what you're doing.
And that made me think of something else that, you know, you and I have chatted about quite a bit. Like I run a smaller team. So that has always been part of my business model. With that goes, those agents have to be producing at a certain level. It's a non-negotiable. Because if you have a small team and no one's producing, it's problematic. If you have a medium to a large team, everyone should be producing. But if you have a medium to large team, you know, you have more agents that are bringing deals in, right? And so there could be a balance there. But, you know, the magnetizing through your messaging is, you know, the team, in a small team environment, the agents on my team understand there's a minimum number of transactions they have to do every single year to stay in that inner circle team. One of the values of having multiple levels of teams inside of your business is that if they're not producing at a certain level to be on the inner circle, I'm spending more time with them, I'm deal doctoring with them, I'm spending more one-on-one. They can move into the marketing group and still be a part of the community and the ecosystem. And so another consideration to think about, but I'm able to magnetize all of that. I'm able to speak to that so clearly, and it attracts a certain level of agent because they're like, yep, everyone around me is producing.
Yeah, exactly. Because agents come to you with, you know, the belief and understanding of all of the things that you've sold them on. So you have to have that follow through.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you see agents leaving a team very quickly, it's because you have chaos behind the scenes and they're like, whoa, I thought it was this, and instead it's this, right?
Yeah. And retention is a funny thing. Like we said a few minutes ago, I said they might leave. Erin said they will leave.
Well, I mean, ultimately, people, generally speaking, stay on teams for 2 to 5 years. Like that is the average, our industry average. It doesn't mean that people won't stay with you for 7 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's not saying that you won't have some of those team members, but we just have to understand that there is kind of a natural ebb and flow of teams. And the team that I started with is nowhere close to the team that I have today or the team that I had 2 years ago.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it, you know, that your needs change as well. And so a team dynamic or the agents on the team could shift because something has shifted in what you need. And that's okay. That's part of the process. I have one team member that's been with me for going 14 years, going on 15 years, maybe. That is an unusual situation. But her role within the team has shifted as my business has shifted. And so, it's just something, I guess what I'm saying here is, again, retention, as we have here on the slide, retention begins before the hire, without a doubt. You have to prepare for that. But what I'm also saying is, don't be afraid to lose agents when you know you need to make a change.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like that is such a strong statement, Rebecca, is because I didn't want to remember my 5 friends, I didn't want to bump my prices. Like when I found out that I was running this nonprofit, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't go back to them and tell them I'm losing money and what will they think? Like I should have been like, they're stealing from my family. I'm stealing my joy by paying for this team instead of the team making me money, right? That this is just something I have to do for the best interest of myself and the team.
Yeah. And the pivot is, the art of the pivot is something that is learned over time, and it can be super scary, but in the end you get to a much better place. Then it's kind of like staying in a bad relationship, right? Then and a team can kind of be that if you're not super aware and super cognizant of it. So retention, while it is super, super important, going back to the very beginning where we started, is that a team should be based on your vision and it should be aligned with your vision. And as your vision changes, the team might look a little bit different, and that's completely okay.
Totally. Because you have to lead with clarity and boundaries of, just to Rebecca's statement, that it will ebb and flow based on the market, what your needs are. Because I think that for me, I absolutely love, I love seeing and helping agents grow and teaching them how to fish so that they can have the life that they want to have, right? For me, I just love that aspect of it. Maybe that is my nonprofit aspect of it, but I also still love buyers and sellers. At some point that might change for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But we have to lead with clarity, boundaries, and values. And what that looks like for myself and on my team is essentially we have everything laid out to, if you don't do this. So remember, all contracts, it is that you have to have a consequence. Like if this happens, then this, right? And so we have these personal improvement plans, or PIPs. And essentially, anytime that I have a team member have 2-0 months, that usually means they're not doing the things that we had all agreed to together that they were going to do in order to earn business, because I don't make money unless they make money. And so I really feel like a PIP is something that I'm doing for someone and not to someone. And so we give a 30-day turn time that they have to have X amount of phone calls, X amount of conversations and emails and open houses and different things. And if they choose to not to, if they choose to no longer honor the contract that we entered into together, then I have to offer them the door, right?
Erin, can you just clarify? You say 2-0 months, so you mean 2 months with no closings?
Yeah, 2 months of no closings. Generally speaking, that means they're not talking to enough people.
For sure.
And it means they're not talking to enough people, and or they're saying something super weird to people. I've had that a couple times now where I'm like, okay, if we log into the CRM and see like, okay, they're making hundreds of phone calls, and then I start listening to the phone calls, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
And that again comes back to that coaching of watch me, and then I have to watch them or hear them so that I can help create where they're missing that boat, right? So we look at all of the stats before we put somebody on a PIP, but it's not fair for a top producing agent to see Joe Schmo hanging out for 6 months, not selling anything.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't motivate that top agent. They don't want to interact with that person that is not performing at the level that they said that we all agreed to, right? That my team is, or that's what I've decided my team is, right? It excites me to help, right? But yeah, 2-0 months is what triggers the PIP to go into place.
And what Erin is really talking about, something I say all the time, is you absolutely can't grow what you're not measuring. And so the accountability component, not only is Erin talking about the accountability for maintaining a certain level of engagement, a certain level of phone calls, she's also talking about monitoring those metrics as a team lead so she can dive in and help the agent with better conversion. If you're not tracking that in some way, or you don't have your pulse on that, it's very hard to help an agent grow, change, and get better.
Right.
So that's, again, the ecosystem coming full circle with the systems and the operations and the expectations, getting you to a place where now you're really like monitoring the accountability, and you're monitoring what agents are doing in order to produce or not produce so that you can help them. That also ties into your value add, right? You know, how there are some teams where there is no coaching like that. There is no Erin listening to the phone calls and helping them. So if you're on this call and you're thinking about joining a team, that should give you some great metrics of what to ask for in a team lead also.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Because ultimately it's setting up those clear expectations, and then you have to remind your team of those things often, right? You have to inspect anything that you expect of your team. And we do that on my team with a 100-point week, along with a certain amount of phone calls that have to happen inside that CRM every single week, because that's a very good indication to me if they are having enough conversations in order to move that needle forward. Because sometimes you'll just end up finding that some people thought that their brothers and uncles and cousins were going to just use them because now they're in real estate, and they watched HGTV thinking that they're going to make all of this money, and then they just don't want to talk to anybody. And that's not what it is.
Yeah. It's great leadership. I mean, Erin's talking about great leadership. She's talking about setting the expectations, helping where is needed, and communicating on a regular basis.
Right.
Right. And so a little bit, do you do group and one-on-one? Because that's another thing as a team lead you need to iron out.
Yeah. So essentially, yes, the answer is yes. I do quarterly one-on-ones, and that is important for me to spend that time recognizing what happened that last quarter, and what needs to happen moving forward if they still want to hit those goals, or if we need to lower the goals because they are not willing to do what it takes, right? Like it's just getting back on the same page of that. But then also inside those quarterly one-on-ones, I really want to find out what really is important to my team member, because sometimes it's money, but sometimes it really is spending more time with their family or making enough money in order for them to go on those vacations or whatever. And it gives me the opportunity to really kind of dig in and then be able to remind them when they don't want to go to work of like, hey, Andrea, like, you know, I logged into the CRM today and I see that we haven't made any kind of phone calls. You know, firstly, are you okay? Yeah. And then secondly, is it still important to you that you earn enough money in order to take your daughter on that Disney cruise for the fall? Or has that changed? Right? Like that just kind of hits a little bit different than like, you're not making me enough money.
Of course.
Right.
And then there's an element as a team lead, there is an element of, you know, reward in watching people meet their goals. There's an element of reward in helping people achieve things they may never have been able to achieve, or they may not have thought they could ever achieve. And so that comes into play with when you're deciding what you're building and what it looks like, right? What are the things, Erin says it all the time, like fill your cup. What are the things that fill your cup? You know, a great piece of advice, I think, is to not try and fill your cup with things that don't authentically fill your cup.
Right. Because then I have the quarterly one-on-ones, and then we as a team, like my next team meeting, guess what? We're done with quarter one. Did we hit our goal? Did we not? Like it's important as a team leader, like they're looking to you for that structure, right? And they're looking to you for that accountability. And did the team hit their goals? And if they didn't, what are we going to do to rectify it for the next quarter as a team? Do we need to bring in some more team members? Do we need to make some more phone calls, do some more open houses, work our sphere, like do a client event? Like what needs to change in order to ensure that we hit those numbers for that next quarter?
And also it's an opportunity, which will lead into the next pillar that we're going to talk about. It's an opportunity to find out what your team needs. That's a responsibility as a team lead too. You can't always say yes, because sometimes you'll get crazy requests and you're like, wait, what? No, I can't hire you a driver.
Right. And yes. And we do that annual planning. And inside of that, that's where we recap what the team offers, what they have committed to, right? Ask them for their buy-in again. I only change my team agreements once a year on that ICA, because if you do it too many times, they can get whiplash, right? And then we also will say, what do we want to start doing? What do we want to stop doing? And then what do we for sure want to continue doing? So we can really get a gauge as to what we want to change on that for sure.
Yeah. Which leads us perfectly into the growth and ancillary services. Before making any changes, you have to actually have those conversations with the team, like Erin just mentioned. You know, you could decide that you need to add something, or you want to grow in a certain way, or you want to add a service, or you want to add something that you see as huge value to the team. And the team's like, what? I didn't need that.
Right. So like then it just adds to more confusion.
Completely. So you don't want to scale too fast, right? Because we know that that can be a disruption and it can be problematic. Adding additional services or onboarding additional people can actually lead to disruption and kill culture and profit rather than provide the value and the benefit. So the conversation is so very important. But let's talk a little bit about what we mean by an ancillary services. Erin and I run businesses with ancillary services, but completely different, right? You know, before we dive into some of the options, we also really want to promote that anything that you bring to the team, you should be auditing it quarterly, which Erin mentioned, and you should expand only what's been proven, and you got to watch the profits and the attrition of anything. So for example, if you were to bring in, and I've seen team leads do this, where they brought in an in-house photographer and videographer, and then none of their agents were using them because their agents were, you know, had relationships with other photographers or other videographers that they had been using for many, many years. So they didn't want to break that relationship to jump ship to the new photographer or media team, right? So that's an example of great idea, great hire, super expensive. And if no one's using it, it's no value.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. And then it's also like ancillary businesses will kind of talk about, it really is state specific. It is sometimes broker specific. So first and foremost, again, we're not lawyers. We want to comply 100% with RESPA and all of the things involved on that, right? So please make sure that you're compliant first and foremost on that. But let's dive into a couple different options. You a lot of times though, this is not immediate, right? Your team has to usually be at a certain level of production before other people would want to invest, or, sometimes, right? So Rebecca, why don't you kind of talk about what you have as far as ancillary businesses?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I started a staging business, an in-house staging business for my team. We stage every listing. We'll do vacant houses. We'll do empty houses. For a lot of years, I was doing the staging. I loved it. It was it was kind of a release for me. Not sustainable, right? Definitely not something that I could do long term. So we have a staging manager, we have a warehouse manager, we have a team that does, again, all staging for every single listing that we take. It's a huge value proposition and something that we talk a lot about when I'm recruiting agents for the inner circle. It's also hugely profitable. It was not hugely profitable at the beginning, but I've been running it over the course of 10 years. And so that business, we profit, it's $80,000 to $100,000 a year in profit. So it is a considerable chunk, but how much is that actually benefiting us in higher commissions? How much is that benefiting us in higher sales prices? Because still we're selling a lot of our homes above list price right now, even in this weird market. How much more does that actually make me in agent attraction? So there are some dollar amounts that you're never really going to be able to pinpoint, but I know without any of those things, we're making $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Yeah. And I think that that's incredible. And some of the other things that you could get into when your team's a certain production, and it's just because as a whole, some of these opportunities don't even appear to you until you're at a certain production level, right? And that is different services through title, services through a lender, as well as maybe like insurance, right? So I'm still looking into the insurance part of it. I haven't found an exact structure or anything that really makes sense for me to put my name on, or that I would feel excellent promoting, right? But for me,
wait, Erin, hang. Can we back up just a second? When you say like mortgage and title and insurance as a team lead, can you just explain what you mean by that? Because even when I met you and we started talking about it, I was like, wait, you're doing what? This is not like allowed in my state. Like Arizona, you can do everything. In Oregon, you can do nothing, right? But explain what you mean by that, because I think a lot of agents are probably in the same space. Like, wait, my brokerage has an in-house mortgage person. My brokerage has in-house lending. So I think that what you've built inside of your team is first a testament to how strong your team is, but second, like so smart and something agents don't think about as an opportunity or a possibility.
Yeah. And that's what I would say is if your brokerage has your buyers and sellers filling out an ADA of like, hey, these are some of the businesses that we're making money off of, then you should just really kind of understand that you can also, you just might have to hit a certain level of production before it's available to you, or you have to negotiate that, right? And we do on my team for both buyers and sellers, we are required, that is a RESPA thing, to tell people up front of like, hey, listen, if there's all of these title companies, you can use any one of them. One of the ones that we love is Magnus Title, and it's because they have the best escrow officer I've ever experienced. And hey, by the way, if you choose to do business with them, we may earn a little something from them with having, you can either do like a Moxie, which is like a monthly marketing fee, or you can do a oh my gosh, what's it called? Like where it's kind of like a stock option. I'm blanking out on the name right now. Where you actually own part of the title company, and you are getting a certain percentage of gross like proceeds from the amount of business that comes in. So it helps you anytime that you're able to get more deals over to that title company or to that lender, right? But obviously everything does have to be RESPA compliant. And so what that looks like is a RESPA can't be any kind of kickbacks or any kind of, it has to be based off of either a salary or an agreement off of the proceeds, right? And that's kind of what I ended up working out with a lender, is that we have it just kind of set up that we own a branch and we get a certain percentage from this branch. And what ends up happening is the same thing with Rebecca, is that I'm able to make 100 to 200,000 more on each of these things every single year by being able to kind of make some extra money. Like, we have to have a lender anyway. We have to have a title company anyway, right? And all of these people really can choose whoever they want to work with, but we've already established who's excellent in their role. And I'd rather call one title company and go down the 20 deals I have working, one lender and go down the 20 deals, instead of all of these different places. And then we all benefit also. So yeah.
But for the ancillary, and that's great, Erin, so for everyone listening, Erin is effectively in relationships and, with a lender and with an escrow company that financially benefits her. She has built that based on reputation. She's built that based on consistency in doing business in her market. So yeah, you may have to get to a certain point where you're doing a certain volume or you have a certain number of agents for that really to make sense. But I think another thing in real estate that isn't spoken enough about is having multiple income streams. And building, that's the sustainable part. That's the scalable and sustainable part. Erin's mortgage business, the partnership with the lender and the partnership with escrow, without her showing homes or selling homes, is still going to be generating income.
Correct.
And that's something for the long term to really think about.
Yeah. And what I also appreciate about that is that, like, if people ever leave my team, because that does happen, right? And they could continue to use my title person or my lender that I introduced them to, then guess what? I am still making money off that person, even though they left the team, just kind of in a roundabout way, right?
So smart. Okay, we have 4 minutes, so we're going to cover this quickly. We talked to you about the 8 pillars of business that we really believe in. I'm not going to go over those again. If anyone's here and they can drop in the chat, like, what are some of the pillars or key takeaways that they need to work on or that they've nailed, you can always reach out to us afterwards with questions, and we'll come back to try and help you out with that. But we know we covered a lot of ground, and hopefully everyone at whatever stage they're at is able to walk away with a couple of new bits of information to tuck away. So tools, we have 4 great resources for you for showing up today that we're super excited about. We always want to deliver actionable items. And, right here today, you're going to have access to a business plan workbook. This business plan is a step-by-step guide that walks you through your structure, your profit, your purpose. It is fillable. It is online. You can share it with your team. It's really comprehensive in the sense that it's not just about transactions. It's very much so trying to help you get into alignment and helping your team members identify, or for you to identify, some of the gaps in your business and some of the places where you need to spend a little bit more time maybe in learning or leveraging. Okay, the next one is the handbook. And this handbook is a combination of a handbook that Erin has been using for many, many years, and some of the things that we have inside of my team. So you're getting points of view from multiple team structures. And your team handbook is where you're clarifying roles, the expectations, the accountability. It's your team Bible. We are so happy for you to be here. Here's what that looks like. And it is editable. You can make changes for what works inside of your business, but super super valuable tool to have when you are thinking about building a team, and or even if you have a team that you're thinking about how you change, edit, make better. The handbook might be something that you need to focus on.
Yeah, and this is a 100-point week tracker. And how I have run my team is that I actually don't care how somebody wants to make their money. I just care that they hit 100 points every single week. And what that does is allow me to see what they're actually like working on. So we've given point values to all sorts of different things. Obviously, it's editable. You can change it to whatever fits your team and what might work for you. But also there's several different CRMs like my CRM that you're able to just add this right into. So it kind of helps with just the dashboard where you can see a little bit of everything of how many points they hit for the week. I feel like from a leadership standpoint, that's really good.
It's an amazing tool that I'm grateful that Erin shared with me. I've implemented something very similar inside of my team and hadn't been doing it at that capacity before. So I do love it. Okay, the last one is a leadership communication pack. This is just some awkward conversations that you never thought you would have to have, and some guidance in how to handle those situations. Because I think in general in real estate, we all have degrees in awkward conversations, but this is really just to guide you through some of the things that you need to make sure you're talking to your team members about on a regular basis that may not, come naturally to you or may not be something that you had thought about before. So, oops, I opened that by accident. Sorry about that. Okay.
And this is for everybody that signed up for the webinar.
Yes.
It will automatically get sent out to you. If you're watching this on a replay, you might just have to send a DM into Moms in Real Estate just because they don't know what email you're at.
Good reminder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we are in the process of launching She Builds Teams, and this is an intensive where any team leader can come to the table, meet with us on a regular basis, get a bird's eye view into our live working team systems, management, leadership, hiring, firing, retention, the entire ecosystem. It is a fly on the wall opportunity that I wish I had had all those years ago. So I didn't gain as many gray hairs and wrinkles from all of the different team iterations. But inside of that intensive, we're working with their live sessions. We're working with agents to help them complete team structures. We're spitballing compensation plans. We're sharing compensation plans, not just Erin and I's, but we have an amazing group of guest coaches that are helping in the She Builds Teams intensive by delivering what they've been using. We're talking about team building and systems, onboarding, the leadership framework, an entire team building, business in a box, so to say. We're super excited about the opportunity. One of the reasons that we found that we wanted to actually embark upon this is there are a lot of team building coaches out there, and they really seem to be speaking to men. And we love men, and that's all great, but it's a different language, and it is a different framework that we felt needed to be a gap that needed to be filled. Erin has attended so many of those.
It was all guys. And how they run their teams is completely different than women do, because we feel for our people, and we also, I feel like are just a little bit more reasonable on expectations and execution, but I feel like we also need more women in leadership roles. And a lot of times I think it gets kind of put to the back burner because of kids or whatever other reasons, right? So we wanted to help women specifically.
Yes. And so we're so glad that you are here. There's more information on shebuildsteams.com if you're interested. And of course, if you snap this QR code and join the wait list, we'll be sure to get you information on dates and information on in-person events that we're also going to be hosting, and then information on the entire course structure. So thank you for coming and sharing a little bit of your time.
Thank you.